Imagine waking up every morning not to the sound of an alarm clock, but to slamming doors, screams piercing the walls, and the suffocating feeling that your home was a prison. For Ethan Cole, childhood wasn't made of cartoons and innocent laughter. It was made of hidden bruises, silent tears, and the certainty that survival was his only mission. While the other boys played in the backyard, he hid in closets, praying for the storm to pass. But the storm didn't. Each day brought new invisible scars, new proof that hell could have an address and a surname. And you might wonder, how could a boy so small, so vulnerable, find within himself the strength to face a giant? How could someone condemned to pain transform that pain into discipline, and that discipline into an unbreakable mind? This is the story of Ethan Cole. The story of a boy who had everything to become just another statistic, but decided to become something greater, a mental warrior. That night, Ethan's childhood ended. His desperate mother dragged him by the hand as she threw clothes into a bag. The boy's heart raced, fear throbbed. For the first time, the door to the house opened, not to return, but to escape. They climbed into an old car, its engine sputtering, its headlights dim. But just behind, the roar of another engine echoed down the road. Their father had spotted them. The chase was on. The tires screeched, the steering wheel shook, and despair filled the air. Ethan huddled in the seat, feeling his mother's chest vibrate with every suppressed sob. And then, for the first time, he understood. Either they escaped tonight, or they would never escape. Hell wasn't just chasing them. It was determined to hunt them down. The car sped on, but the headlights in the rearview mirror grew closer. His father was there, like a predator relentless on its prey. And it was in that moment, in the middle of the deserted road, that Ethan realized something deep inside. No matter what happened, he would never again be the same boy who hid in silence. Fate had drawn a crossroads. Either he would be destroyed by the past, or the man who would never let himself be broken would be born. From the outside, the neighborhood looked like a postcard. Quiet streets, well-kept lawns, smiling neighbors. But inside one of the houses, the walls held dark secrets. For Ethan Cole, the ordinary world was not a safe haven, but an invisible battlefield. While the other boys rode their bikes, he learned to walk silently, dodging his father's heavy footsteps. Every slammed door was an explosion, every broken dish a threat. His childhood was marked by hiding places, under the bed, inside closets, always waiting for the screams to stop. At school, he wore a mask. The clean uniform, the shy smile, the attempt to appear ordinary. But inside, there was only fear. Teachers saw a distracted boy. Classmates, a fragile one. No one saw that behind his eyes lay entire sleepless nights. This was the world Ethan grew up in. A house that looked perfect on the outside, but inside molded him in pain. It was on a suffocating night that life pushed him to the limit. His father, overcome with rage, raised his hand against his mother once more. Ethan, hidden in the corner, felt his heart race. Fear consumed him, but within it, something unexpected was born. For the first time, his voice pierced the silence. "Don't hit her," he shouted, his throat burning. The man turned in surprise. His heavy gaze fell on the small boy, who trembled but did not back down. That short, fragile sentence was the first call to adventure. Not because he had defeated his father, but because he dared to challenge. It was then that the flame began to shine. The price, however, came quickly. The push threw him against the wall. The physical pain burned, but something inside him ignited. The boy who always cowered had crossed an invisible line. There was no going back. After the scream came the punishment. His father reinforced his authority with violence. Ethan cowered again, convinced he had been foolish to believe he could fight back. Every bruise, every whispered threat in the darkness, reminded him that courage came at a high price. At school, the days seemed even heavier. His stutter worsened, the silence grew. He believed it was better to hide, that perhaps it would be safer to accept his fate as a victim. In his room, sitting on the cold bathroom floor, he wept silently, hugging his knees. The reflection in the cracked mirror showed a defeated boy, weighed down by shame and the feeling of being a burden. Refusing the call is the point at which the hero believes he can't, and Ethan believed it. For days, his flame nearly died out. But even in this state, a small voice inside continued to whisper that his story wasn't over yet. It was his mother who gave him the first glimmer of hope. One night as his father slept, she woke him with an urgent whisper. "One day, Ethan, we'll get out of here. But when that day comes, you'll have to run." Without looking back, there was weariness in her eyes, but also a quiet strength. He didn't fully understand, but he remembered every word. That same week, an elderly neighbor, Mrs. Hensley, noticed the hidden bruises. She didn't ask. She just placed her hand over Ethan's and said, "There are people born to break the cycle. You are one of them." These two figures, an exhausted mother and a wise neighbor, planted the seed of what would be her first lesson. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, made of whispered plans and promises kept close to the chest. Ethan began to watch, to wait, to dream of the day he would leave that hell. And that day finally arrived. A rainy dawn, the sound of the storm masking rapid footsteps. His mother woke him and dragged him to the back door, his suitcase small, his heart racing. His father slept drunk, or seemed to. They ran to Mrs. Hensley's antique car, which was waiting in the street, engine running. Ethan looked out the window and saw the house for the last time, the place where he learned what fear was. And then the noise. A door slammed, footsteps, a scream. "Run!" the mother shouted as the car sped off. The sound of tires tearing the asphalt was like the scream of the soul itself trying to escape. The father ran to the street but was left behind. The world, for the first time, seemed bigger than the pain. They crossed the threshold. They didn't know where they were going, but they knew what they were leaving behind. The new city didn't bring immediate peace. It brought a new school, curious eyes, and a cruel reality. The past doesn't disappear, it transforms. Ethan now faced another kind of violence, bullying. His stutter made him the perfect target. The laughter echoed like echoes from home. But amidst the crowd of jeers, an unexpected figure emerged. Sister Catherine, an austere teacher known for her strictness. She watched him closely and, unlike the others, showed no pity. One day, after yet another disastrous performance, she called him in and said, "It's not your voice that fails, Ethan. It's your faith in yourself." That sentence struck him. For the first time, someone saw beyond his mistakes. The teacher began to guide him in secret. Books, extra assignments, small tests. Each one was a battle against his own mind, between peers who despised him and a mentor who challenged him. Ethan began to discover that the real battlefield wasn't the schoolyard. It was within. Time passed, but the pain never completely left him. Even far from the house where it all began, Ethan still carried the echoes of hell. Every laugh in the hallway, every cutting word, every look of contempt pushed him back to that dark corner of his childhood. One day, the principal called him in. She said it might be best to transfer him to a more suitable class. It was her polite way of saying he wasn't good enough, that he was beneath the others. Ethan left the classroom with his head down, feeling the weight of an invisible sentence. He sat in the empty hallway, the cold school lights reflecting off his silent tears. There, in the heart of rejection, he understood the world would not save him. No one would come to rescue him. The abyss wasn't a physical place. It was the moment he realized he had only two choices: sink for good or fight. That night, Ethan returned home and stood in front of the cracked mirror in his small bedroom. Tears streamed down his face, but his eyes no longer cried out for help. They cried out for strength. He knew something inside him needed to die. The fragile boy, the boy of fear, the child of pain. He raised his trembling fists and made a silent promise. No matter how much it hurt, he would no longer be the victim of his own story. He grabbed an old notebook and began writing, reading, repeating words until exhaustion overcame him. Day after day, he created his routine, running before sunrise, writing before bed, training the body, the mind, the patience. Every page written, every controlled breath was a brick in the reconstruction of himself. Symbolic death came not with blood, but with discipline. And rebirth began in silence, the moment he looked in the mirror and saw not pain, but decision. Months passed. The stuttering subsided. His grades rose. And for the first time, Ethan began to take pride in something that came from within. It wasn't the world applauding him. It was he who recognized himself. During a presentation in class, silence fell. He took a deep breath, the words coming out slowly but firmly. When he finished, no one laughed. The teacher smiled. And in that small gesture, he understood what victory was. The reward wasn't glory or fame. It was control, the ability to master the mind, to transform fear into action. The boy who had once hidden now faced the world, still afraid, but with enough courage to move forward. The pain hadn't gone away, but now it was fuel. Each wound was a mark of resistance, and each painful memory, a lesson. The warrior was beginning to emerge. Time passed, and with it came new trials. Even with the progress, Ethan was still haunted by echoes of the past. All it took was a loud sound, an aggressive look, and his entire body reacted as if he were back in that house. The fear didn't disappear immediately. He retreated, observed, tested. At school, rejection still loomed large. Some teachers still saw him as a lost cause. Some classmates saw him as a stranger pretending to be strong. But Ethan was no longer the same. Every word of contempt became fuel. He would rise before dawn, put on his worn sneakers, and run through the deserted streets. Was he running to escape? No, he was running to find himself. Each drop of sweat was a memory being purified. The past no longer dominated him, only shaped him. And in this solitary routine, he discovered that the path back wasn't a step backward. It was a return to his origin, not to suffer again, but to look pain in the face and say, "I won't run away anymore." True transformation doesn't happen when others believe in you. It happens when you believe in yourself. Ethan, now a teenager, began training not just his body, but his mind. He ran until his lungs burned. He read until the words became a blur. He did everything the world told him he couldn't. One night, after hours of training, he stood before the cracked mirror. The same mirror that had once reflected fear now showed something different, an unbreakable gaze. There were scars, there was weariness, but there was also fire. He smiled for the first time without guilt. Because he understood that winning isn't about defeating the enemy, it's about mastering yourself. Ethan had died a victim and been reborn as a mental warrior. This was his resurrection. The rebirth of the fragile boy into a man who knew that pain is not an enemy. It is the toughest, most sincere teacher there is. Time had transformed him. Ethan no longer sought to prove anything to anyone. Now he lived to inspire. His quiet presence spoke louder than words. Classmates who had once mocked him now regarded him with respect. Teachers who had given up began to praise him. But the true reward wasn't in recognition. It was in helping others not give up on themselves. He began to hear stories similar to his own. Young people scarred by violence, rejection, and guilt. And Ethan spoke to them as if he had returned from hell and found the way out. He said, "Your mind is your weapon. No one can take away what you train within." The elixir of his journey wasn't personal victory, it was legacy. He understood that his pain had transformed into purpose. That boy of fear was now a mentor to others. And looking back, he no longer saw monsters. He saw lessons. The boy who once cowered in fear now walked tall, with the steady, silent gaze of one who had known darkness and survived. Ethan Cole wasn't shaped by luck, he was forged in pain. Every scar told a story, every mark a living reminder that the human mind can endure anything, even hell itself. Now looking back, he understood that violence hadn't destroyed him, it had awakened him. That fragile boy had died long ago, and in his place had arisen something new, a mental warrior. A man who knew that true power lies not in conquering others, but in mastering oneself every day. Ethan learned that overcoming isn't forgetting, it's transforming. That forgiveness isn't weakness, it's liberation. And that when you rise from the ashes, the world notices, because the light born from suffering is different. It's denser, it's more real. Now his mission was greater. He knew there were other Ethans out there, boys and men trapped in silence, hiding pain behind smiles, believing themselves weak. He wanted to find them, to show that the mind can be trained, that pain can be fuel, that no one need be held hostage by their past. But this was only the first battle, because surviving childhood was only the beginning. The world still awaited him, with its temptations, defeats, and new downfalls, and the mental warrior forged in suffering would now have to face an even more treacherous enemy, his own mind in its glory days. And this is where the story continues. If this journey touched something deep inside you, if Ethan's scars resemble your own, then don't let this fire go out. Subscribe to the channel, share this story, and write in the comments. What was your abyss, and how did you survive it? Because the next chapter is already being written, And when Ethan faces the adult world, he will discover that the real battlefield is not the home, nor the street, it is the mind.